Welcome to another episode of CYC Youth Chat. Today on the panel we've got David, Anna, Gabriella and Sam. Today's topic of discussion, and I think it's actually quite an interesting one, is the issue of wealth. So today we want to discuss is it alright to be rich? What are the consequences and what are the main responsibilities you have of being wealthy? And also how to deal with it. We also want to talk about some of the things that can go wrong. So to kick it off, I want to start with the question: how do we perceive wealthy people on earth? What do we think? What do we think of wealth? Sam, what do you think?
I think really important that we have to consider wealth in terms of not specifically how much money people have, but specifically with their desire for money. I believe someone who has a desire for money is a rich person. And they're the type of people in whom the Bible says, different verses about a rich man. That's the rich man they're talking about. Someone who has desire for money. Someone who wants money in their life purely for just the satisfaction of being rich. It says a parable of the rich fool, which is Luke 12:13-21. I'm not going to say the whole parable, but the last verse says, "So is he who lays up treasure for himself and is not rich toward God."
Yeah.
So the rich people whom we're talking about today are the people who are not rich towards God, who are people who see their own wealth in terms of money and monetary gain as something personal and has nothing to do with God. That's personally my definition of the rich man in who we're talking about today.
What do you guys think about that definition?
I think rich and poor is not just about your money, like your spirituality as well. Like you can be poor in spirit and you can have someone who's very spiritually wealthy and they have a lot to give and they're really like a shining example of Christ in the world. That's someone who's spiritually wealthy.
All right, so I want to get on to a really big topic, and that is it okay to be rich? Now, we can talk about this for a very long time, and there are many examples from the Bible. But Anna, do you have any specific examples from the Bible? Like, tell us, for instance, what Jesus' teachings about rich people.
I think money is nice, but it's the love of money that is the root of evil. So in Matt 19, it's about the righteous man who's very spiritual, and he asks Jesus for eternal life, and he asks for perfection as well. And Jesus says to him, "Okay, go sell what you have, give it all to the poor, and then you'll have treasure in heaven." But he left sorrowfully, and he kept all his possessions, and he never entered heaven. So the rich man never entered heaven, opposed to Luke 19, the tax collector. He's a legalized robber, basically, and he's the most hated man in the world, and he gives half of his goods to the poor, and he returns what he has taken by fourfold.
Yeah. You actually said something interesting there, which I've never thought about. You said that the first man, you think he didn't go to heaven. Now, I don't know, it's a bit cool, but I want to discuss that actually. Like, in the words it says, to be perfect, go and sell what you have, right? So we can see from what this man was already doing in life, he was actually doing quite a good job. And obviously, like Christ went through, do not steal, do not murder, and these are things which a lot of people probably don't do. But one of the last things he said, love your neighbor as yourself. And he truthfully, and that's something that's very hard, and it's a very difficult concept. And he actually accepted that, and he said he did do this. And then Christ said, if you want to be perfect, do this also. So how do we think about that? Do you think, I definitely think that this man still went away sorrowful, but he still has a chance to enter the kingdom of heaven. I don't think his hope is lost from that moment on.
Yeah, I don't think we can make the call whether he made it or not, but something really interesting about that parable, it shows where your heart's at. And it's the same if God gives us instruction or we have a certain commandment and we either obey it or disobey it, shows us where our heart's at. That verse when Jesus is go and sell what you have, it's funny because that's the exact verse that made St. Anthony give everything and then go out and live in the desert and become the father of monasticism. And so it shows that his heart is completely different to someone who the thought of charity, the thought of giving all he has for God's sake made him sorrowful. If it made him sorrowful, his heart's in a very different place. So I think that's something cool about that.
A modern day example, actually, Irene Gleeson, she was an Australian, she lived in Sydney, and she had a lot of money, and she lived in Bondi, had a massive holiday house, and she had 13 grandkids.
13 kids.
Sorry, grandkids.
I was going to say, man, that's cool.
And, you know, she felt one day that she had a calling from God. She literally sold everything that she had, took a caravan, went to Uganda, started with 20 kids under a mango tree in one of the most dangerous places in Uganda. And now she's got 5,000 kids every day who she's feeding. And she had nothing. And so many times that, you know, the soldiers had barged in and almost killed her, but she, you know, she kept persevering. She literally sold everything she had and she went. And her service is so blessed over there, you know. You know, she's got over 5,000 kids, and that's just in that one campus, you know. Such an amazing...
But, I want to get back to the main thing, like, so is it okay to be rich?
Yeah, but with the difference between this lady and the righteous man was that this righteous man was not willing to give, you know, his money. You know, he was perfect and everything else, he was doing really well and everything else, but this one thing, this one aspect of his life, which money, and he was a rich man, he wasn't willing to give it up. And I do think that, you know, it is like a very big thing within our lives that if there is something that we hold on to, and there's one sin that we hold on to, and we can't give it up, then how can we enter?
Lead to eternal condemnation?
It's not within our, you know, we wouldn't want to judge and say whether or not he's going to get heaven, but I think that you cannot hold on to something. Like it says in Matthew 6:24 that no one can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one or love the other, or else be loyal to one or despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon. Yeah. So he's within his mindset not to give up his, you know, his wealth, you know, is not definitely like a stumbling block for him.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. And the thing is, at the end of the day, when it comes down to two options, you're gonna say he's gonna take the money instead of Christ.
Christ told him, go and sell what you had, and that was one option for him, and he took the other option of not taking any of what Christ said and said, no, I want to keep my possessions. For him, his possessions was worth more than eternal life.
And I feel like you have to be all in. Like if something like that is holding you back, you can't be half-half. Yeah, it has to be something that you have to be. You have to be willing to give up anything for Christ. Yeah.
Okay. From that chapter as well, like that's one of verse 21 that Jesus says, "For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." So it's all about where your heart is. Like the fact that he couldn't give it up, that like his heart was consumed.
And I think it's different. Like there's a line between, you know, if you're relying on your money for happiness, and if you are serving it as if it is a master, it's different. You can be spiritually very wealthy and also, you know, wealthy in this life as well. But you know, it's very different if you're serving.
I think the best example of that is actually the woman who donated the 2 mites to the church, and Christ said when he was standing there looking at the boxes, the money boxes, he said, this woman is the greatest out of them all because she's giving everything that she has. And I think that's the concept. You have to give everything. And like you said, you're all in. You can't be half-half. So God, I think, wants the people who give their all to him, not the people who like have some confidence in in money and then have some of their confidence in God. So yeah, I think that's very important.
It's where your mindset is, I think, which is most important. I think if your mindset is on the kingdom of heaven, then you will be willing to give up anything. But if your mindset is on the earth and what the earth has to offer in its riches, then definitely it will be a stumbling block for you and you won't be able to make the kingdom of heaven.
And I think Satan, like, he puts into your mind, you know, once I have that amount of money, I'm gonna be happy. Once I have that, I'm gonna be happy. And, you know, all these materialistic possessions that, you know, one may consider wealth in this world, like once I get that jet boat or that massive house or that, you know, that job that pays really well, is, you know, but money is a number and numbers never end. So if you're looking for happiness, you know, you never get through money.
But I also want to stress that we did say that being rich isn't bad. I think that's what we need to get to, because at the end of the day, it's the pursuit of the money and the sole pursuit of money which is the evil. So I think that if you are rich, you can still be good. Like, for example, the best example I can think of in the Bible is where the people were given talents. Right? Mm-hmm. The person who didn't do anything with the talent, the person was given denarius and he buried it in the ground, Christ rebuked that person. He said that this is not the person that you want to enter the kingdom of heaven. He said, you know, you need to work hard on this earth and you can't just waste the talents. Like wealth and riches is something, it's a blessing which Christ gives to you. And like any blessing, you can either use it for good or you can use it for bad. So I think a lot of the time people focus on negative connotations to do with wealth, but there are many positive aspects as well.
And Jesus is not saying that it's sinful to be rich. He's saying that he just doesn't like Christians that are putting their faith, love, hope, and security into money, because money soon becomes, you know, our savior, our salvation, because we start depending on it. We're not using it for God's glory. We are, you know, putting it away and we're saving it up just in case, you know, one day something happens, saving it for a rainy day. and that money can come into use. But we don't trust in God.
Yeah.
So that's,
Yeah, it's a lack of faith, definitely.
Yeah.
And St. Maximus the Confessor actually says something really good. He says, food is not evil, but gluttony is. Childbearing is not evil, but fornication is. Money is not evil, but avarice is, which is like greed. He said, glory is not evil, but vainglory is. So in the end, he's saying that indeed, there is no evil in existing things, but only their misuse.
Yeah.
So the money that we have, if we misuse it, and if we really put our trust in the money, then that's the wrong thing. But if we have money and we use it to the glory of the church and we give it to the poor and we use it to build churches and to build services, then that's to the glory of God. And you know, you will be rewarded for the money that you've put into that.
One last thing I want to ask before we go to the break is, you know, ambition is different from obviously like, you know, all that money, right? And ambition is something I think which we need to have in our lives, because you need to be still driven to achieve certain things, because without certain ambition, you feel like you'll be unfruitful. So what's your opinion about ambition and, you know, wealth and attainment of wealth? Do you think that ambition is necessarily a bad or a good thing to have?
I think it's definitely like a good thing. We need to have goals and we need to you know, be aiming for something. But again, like it can be misused, it can be twisted. Like for example, like a father feels that he has to, like, man, I gotta put food on the table, I gotta put my kids through school, and then he goes and he works like ridiculous hours, and that pulls him away from his family a bit. You know, that has its negative effects. So it's all about like, even if we have the right intentions, it can be done the wrong way, and we can get like roped into the love of money. So like, I guess the bottom line is, whose glory am I doing this for? Am I doing this for God's glory, or am I doing it for my own glory? Like I know a servant in our church, and like he came to a point where he had to upgrade in his car. He had to get a new car, and he was thinking like, man, should I get a really nice sports car that I'm going to enjoy driving, or should I get, you know, a bit of a bigger car that I can take more of the youth around in? You know, I can like bring them back to church and take them home, and I can use that for service. You know, like so even like in the tiny things and in the big things, like, am I doing this for God's glory, or am I doing this? You know, am I going to be the one who's enjoying this? Or like, is it for my glory, like type thing?
Okay.
So.
I remember someone actually saying, was talking about rich people, and he said, you know, there's CEOs that are like 77 years old. What are they still doing there? I mean, that's an interesting question, actually. What do you guys think? Like, if you're 77 years old, you're that old, right? And you're still, you know, and you've got millions probably behind you, and you're still there. Do you think you can be there and still, you know, serve Christ? Or do you think that if you're getting to that stage, you know, you're just doing it out of love for money?
I think that anything you can do for the honor of Christ. But obviously, that is a situation where it's very dangerous, and it's very difficult to do that for the, you know, the glory of Christ. Like, you know, how many 7-year-olds here is like are there to honor, to remain in work to honor Christ? That.
Yeah, we look at the package.
Yeah.
I agree. Like, I think that if you're at that age and you're in the company and being a CEO at that age, you're definitely in there for the love of money. You do not want to leave that position. You feel like you being a CEO, you being in the top position, you don't want to leave it.
Yeah.
And I think that itself is the love of money, and that itself is the love of being in power, so that can also come to pride.
But is there also a flip side to that? Like, for instance, you know, by him being there, he's staying active with his lifestyle. For instance, like if we look at, say, King David, the point when he became inactive and he stayed on his rooftop was the point when he sinned, for instance.
But when you
like,
retire, not just going home and doing nothing all day, there's so many ways that you can keep active. You see all these really, like, you know, at the library every day, you know, discussing things. And,
Yeah, and I think this is where, you know, when you come to give money to God, you know, tithes, this comes into play, and it's just you giving money to aid the church so they can spread the gospel. Yeah.
So that point, I think, is really important, and it's something which we want to discuss in the next segment. Welcome back to the second segment of the CYC Youth Chat. As you know, today we've been discussing wealth and richness, and I want to start off with this interesting question. According to Forbes magazine, Australia is the 11th richest country on earth. Considering this, how should we as Australians, and indeed, you know, other people in our fellow countries in the US and other Western countries in Europe and everywhere else, use our money, and what responsibilities and priorities come with that? So I'll bring it to the floor. Sam, what do you think?
I think it's important that we have to acknowledge that we are in a wealthy country, and that we do have certain privileges that other people will not have in our same age and same situation, everything. That we can go to church, you know, we can drive to church, that we to have food, we have water, we have clothing, we have shelter. And these are so many privileges that we have as a rich country that many other people in different parts of the world that do not have. So it is within us and our responsibility that we do not forget these people, you know. It says in the Bible that we have to give money to the poor. You know, this is our responsibility as people who have, God has blessed us with money, God has blessed us with this opportunity, and God has given us the responsibility that we have to look after our brothers and sisters everywhere around us. You know, not only in Australia, but in different countries around the world. You know, and we have to support organizations, we have to support, you know, things that spread the word. For example, CYC is a perfect example. You know, right now this show is going out to millions around the world. You know, we have money and we have an opportunity that we can support the show and the people who are working behind it. You know, this is our responsibility that God has given us. And not only is our responsibility, but it's a two-edged sword that we are condemning ourselves if we don't. You know, if we don't look to them, if we don't help our brothers and sisters, if we don't help out organizations like CYC and other things who are spreading the word, it's our condemnation.
Yeah. So what do you think? Yeah.
Yeah, I think like just what you're saying, you know, with the stewards in the Gospel of Luke, like to remember that we're just stewards. Like this money that we have, the jobs we have, these are all blessings from God, things He's given us, and that with that is a responsibility. We have to use that the right way. You know, when He says, "Well done, good and faithful servant," you've been faithful with a few things. Like you've been faithful with the few things that I gave you. So like we all, you know, some of us are working, or if we're still students and we're not yet, like there's going to be a time when we have money and we have like that ability to spend it. And I think with like the country that we live in, very wealthy, our culture, like there's a danger with that as well, that we don't let ourselves get into the love of money. Like with the mission trip when they went to Africa, like we met people there that have nothing and all they want to do is give. And like, you know, we come back here and we have everything, all we want is just more. Like we're just hungry for more and more and more. Like there was one day that Amber Boyles came back with a goat strapped to the bus, because like they'd given, like that's precious livestock, and they give them that because they out of their love in their hearts, and they want the blessings and to do that, so that they give all they have. And like it literally came back with a goat strapped to the bus.
And you can't say no.
And like no, you can't say no. But like it just shows the difference in the hearts that they want to give, and us, and we just we want to build up. And like St. John Chrysostom said something really nice as well, that like our bank accounts should be the bellies of the poor. You know, like that. You know, that's where we store. That's where we store. That's money well spent. You know, like when you spend it on the poor, and not just because like you have to, whatever, but because you should love the poor. You know, like so it's a big responsibility. We're stewards. We need to be faithful with what we've been given.
When we look at examples from the Old Testament, especially, like we know that Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, you know, there were a lot of very wealthy people in the Old Testament. And you know, for them, maybe their prized cattle or their prized livestock, maybe today's Ferrari. Like you don't know. So in a sense, can we say like, can buying these things, can we say that that's bad necessarily? Like buying expensive cars or buying, you know, all these expensive clothes?
I think it is bad because we are trusting in money to bring us happiness. So, you know, we're accumulating all this debt and we're buying phones that do more than just calling. We're buying cars that, you know, the chicks will love. And we are doing all this because we're trusting in money to bring us happiness, when God is the only person that can bring us joy and peace. Materialism can't bring us joy and peace.
I disagree to a certain point. Like,
yeah, I was just going to say, like, although it's dangerous, like, because you fall out of that simplicity that is, you know, such a blessing, but I don't think it's wrong. I think it's just the way you handle the situation.
Yeah, I think if God has really blessed you with money and that He's giving you the opportunity to enjoy yourself, then why not, you know? But you have to have in mind, keep in the back of mind that you have, you know, you have to give to the poor and you have to help out people.
They're your priority.
Yeah, they're your priority.
So
once
one,
you've helped out with people and you still have money, you're left for
Let
your
God's
own,
bless
you know, pleasures, within reason, of course, you know, why not? God has blessed you. This is a blessing from God. This is a reward that He has given you, you know? But at the same time, don't go overboard.
It's your intentions as well. Like, why are you, you know, are you really...
Yeah, I completely agree. But I'm just saying, like, you know, how some
it's
people...
a dangerous situation.
Yeah, it happens like that. I mean, like, we should be giving to the poor. And in fact, generosity is explained like it's measured how much we, not how much we give, but how much left over we have, you know? How much money we have left over.
Yeah.
So it's not about how much we give, it's about how much we have left over. And that's the true meaning of generosity.
I've got a friend actually who his family, they go on an annual trip and they go everywhere around the world and they like to travel. And to other people, that's a luxury. But to him, he uses that trip, and his father always tells him to use that trip as a blessing and to understand that, you know, these things that God has blessed you with, other people don't have. So go when you go back home to thank God for everything that you have and to thank God for the blessings that you have and to not only like to thank Him but to do something about it, to give more to the poor. At the same time that he's enjoying himself, he's still acknowledging the poor. He's still acknowledging his priorities and his responsibilities.
So I think, a good example, like say for instance, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Like that foundation was set up solely like for people, wealthy people, to give 50% of their wealth to the poor. And so far, they have a lot of billionaires, like for instance, Warren Buffett, who's also a philanthropist. Now, these people do a lot of good things and they're wealthy and they can give, as far as I can see, they use their money to help people. And I think that's one of the responsibilities that we're given when we're given riches. But also I want to discuss this issue, like we had a little disagreement here, and it's pretty interesting. Like, do you really think that, say, buying this expensive car, I don't know.
I think you can't condemn it as a sin. I don't think it's a sin, but I think it's a dangerous position. Like, I myself wouldn't go there because I know that I would easily fall from that. And I know in myself that I would fall. So because I know that, I wouldn't.
Yeah, Dave, you ready?
I think the danger is like doing it for the sake of doing it, like just for the sake.
Like
of
I've got the leftover money, why not?
Yeah, but I like what Sam said. Like I'm sure we've all got friends, and like maybe like it's a really well-off family, they have a big, beautiful house, but the way they live their lives, the way they raise their children, is very Christian, and they're taught to give and to give out of love, just as Christ would want us to do. And like, it's funny you mention like wealthy, Australia being like, one thing always gets me, like if you walk around the city, if you walk around the CBD during the day, like you'll see people in their suits and their dresses going to work, and you'll see like people wearing their designer bags going to the gym, and then like on that same corner, you'll see a homeless person, and like there's lots of them, and they all have their own journeys and they're all stories to tell, and they're all like genuinely broken, they genuinely have nothing, and they lots of heartbreak, and that dichotomy always gets me. Like, like you have the rich, and they just want to live their lives and enjoy it, and like kind of, and of course you have those people that have really good hearts and they go out of their way, and like there's interaction between the two. But like to my eyes, it's easy to see like it's like two divided worlds, except we're living in the same world. That's really kind of heartbreaking.
Actually, that's a really good topic. I've heard a lot of debate about, say, people who are poor in Australia or people who are poor in generally wealthy countries. And some people are of the opinion, for instance, like if we live in a capitalist society like ours, everyone has the equal opportunity to, gain wealth. Like if they, not necessarily like everyone has equal opportunity, but people have opportunity to be successful because there are a lot of avenues. Like, do you necessarily think that the poor person that's around wealthy people, do you think he's maybe given up his motivation or like?
I think it's to a certain extent, it's what you're born into, kind of thing. Like, had my parents not encouraged me to, to really embrace, education and things like that, I would not be. But had I been born into a family where they didn't really care, your views and outlooks are based on that, and so you're born into that cycle that keeps going, and your kids will learn the same thing. So I don't necessarily think that. Like, I think it can be on you to change that, but I think to a certain extent you are.
Yeah. I mean, the environment around this plays, I think, an important role. Like, we are in a rich country, but like, say, if you go to, say, a really poor country like Africa, and there's a guy on the street there, I think it's completely different from a man on the street in Sydney. Like, there's a big difference because one has access to all these facilities. One has water, one has some sorts of shelter, social security. The other person isn't given any opportunity. So I think we need to differentiate between like two different people.
That's very true, yeah.
I agree with you, but I still believe that the poor is the poor. I still believe that a poor person in Australia is the same, not the same person, but is the same concept of a poor person in Egypt. And just because he's poor in Australia, it's not our right to judge why he's poor, whether or not he's wasted his money or whether or not he's gambled his money away. But that's not our right to judge. So when I give my money to the poor, I'm not going to give my money to the poor who are in Africa and the people who I know they are poor because of the situation that they've been born into. But when I give my money to the poor, it's the people who are in need. Whether it be the person around the corner from my home or whether it be a person across the other side of the globe.
And spiritually as well, like the spiritually poor. And there was a CYC program I watched a few days ago that was about that, and how like it's not just that concept of poverty, but it's also spiritual poverty, and like you are in the church, and you're fed by the church, and you should share that with others. But like I mean, it's definitely not for us to judge. Some people, they're on the street, because they've had a divorce or something, and the spouse has literally taken everything. Some people got caught up in drug habits, and you can like sit there and debate, that's their choice.
Yeah.
They got themselves there, but the fact is that they are poor, as you said.
Yeah.
And Jesus said, the poor you'll have with you always. Like that opportunity is there. Like it's something we definitely have a responsibility to do because we love them, not to tick a box, not for, I'm going to go there so I can get blessings. Like you give because you love the poor, and that's what Christ teaches us.
Yeah, so I think that was a priority. Like the second part of the question was definitely focusing on the priorities that you have. Like who do you prioritize? And I think that we came to a good conclusion that you give freely and you give open. Like and you don't think you don't know what you don't let your right hand know what your left hand's doing. For instance. So the next question I want to ask is the concept of tithe, right? So what do we think about the concept of tithe? Is it something that we still need to keep in modern day society, or is this some old Jewish thing that we don't need to think about?
No, of course it is.
Yeah,
It's what? It's Jewish?
Oh, sorry.
No, continuation to what Gabby said. Of course, it is something that we need to keep. It is a law, and it was something that is very important. And the concept behind of giving, it says 10% in the Bible, but this number is variable in terms of you don't have to give 10%. You can give 20, you can give 50, you can give 100% like St. Anthony did. It doesn't have to be 10%, but it's the concept of you giving to Christ and not expecting anything in return. Although it says in the Bible that you will be blessed. There is a common sort of rule, or if you like it, that theme that your first fruits. If you give your first fruits, they'll be blessed abundantly. And a lot of church fathers say that when you go and work, give your first payment to the church, all of it, and God will truly bless your first fruits. And this is something that a lot of people do, and they really do see the blessing that God gives them. So the tithe is definitely not something small. I know a lot of people, see it as something, a small aspect of a church, and something, to just, brush over. But it's definitely important, and I think we need to look at it in a very serious manner, and that we have to make sure that every week we do give our tithes.
Yeah. What do you guys think about the tithe concept?
So just like finding salvation and giving rather than just giving to get salvation, right? So I think that, we're all made to love and worship God, and we're going to, use the money that He blessed us with for the church, and not use the money and love the money and then go to God for more money.
The thing I love about the tithe, it actually, there's a verse in Malachi, chapter 3, verse 10, and it says, "Bring all the tithes into the storehouse, that there may be food in my house. And try me now in this, says the Lord of hosts, if I will not open to you the windows of heaven and pour out such blessing that there will not be enough room to receive it." So I think it's like amazing imagery. Like, Christ, God opening up windows of heaven and literally all these blessings pouring upon you. And He says, just for giving the tithe. And the one thing I really like, I've never heard it before, but God says, "Try me."
Yeah, it's like...
And I've never heard.
Yeah.
God says it says, "Try me now."
Yeah.
And so, I've never heard.
I think in other translations as well, it says God is not mocked, and it's basically like this is God's guarantee. Like this is my promise. Like you could try me, or I'm being
But then
honest
again,
with you.
we still give with a cheerful heart. We don't give so that we get in return.
100%.
Although we still have the guarantee, God says, "Try me." We don't give and expect Him. We said, "I gave to you, and you must give back to me."
It's not an investment
It's not a
return.
contract.
Yeah, it's not.
So how do you fall into that?
6% return.
Because sometimes, what if you struggle with those thoughts?
Yeah,
What if you do? How, like David was saying before, you have to always give with love. But what if you struggle with that? Do you refrain from giving because I'm not giving it with love? Where's that? Where do you draw that line?
I think as a first step, you have to give. Whether or not if it's with love, whether or not you're doing it out of just because you want to give, it's just the fact that you have to give.
Doing the right thing the wrong way rather than the wrong thing the wrong way.
Sort of thing. But over time, you'll find that you're doing it out of your heart.
Yeah.
Personally, I think that's why.
So I think we've dealt with some really important topics today. I really like the point about the tithe. I think it's quite important because Christ pouring an abundance of blessings on us. We need to think about this, but we also need to think about how we emulate this and how we pour out blessings on the poor. Because as Christ is rich as well, He's also given us this blessing of richness, and we need to be able to pour out our richness to the poor. So I thank you guys for talking on the panel today, and I look forward to more chats with you guys. Thank you very much.